Film is a disease, Frank Capra said. When it infects your bloodstream, it takes over as the number one hormone. It plays Iago to your psyche. As with heroin, the antidote to film is more film.
Hello and welcome to My Cellular Heart podcast. Today I'm finally back from the Bond shit, and so now I can put two films together with one topic or theme and put a bunch of spoilers in and my take on everything. And today I'm joined by Jason Bromley, the Colonel from Popcorn Promises. You know, everybody hesitates because they want to mention your other show that you used to have. I noticed that, Matt Rich. Hello, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. And today we're doing, I don't know what I'm going to name this episode. You'll see it when you're driving around in your car or you're carrying your phone around or whatever. But The Great Adventurer Returns. It's going to be Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and King Solomon's Mines. And we saw these in the theater. I think you saw Temple of Doom in the theater, yeah?
No, I didn't see it till it was on HBO.
I'm not sure if I saw it in the theater, but I did see King Solomon's Mines in the theater.
Oh, no.
And yeah, it was like, oh, but first let me get to some corrections from my last show that I did when I did the License to Kill episode. I couldn't think of the French actor. Do you know Alain Delon? He's like a famous French actor. Yeah, you don't know foreign films. Alain Delon was a famous French actor that I was trying to think of that was in Red Sun with Toshiro Mifune and Charles Bronson. And F.W. Murnau directed Sunrise from 1927, not Fritz Lang. Got that wrong.
Ugh, everybody knows that one. Come on,
I know, right? Yeah, you're like, duh. And then what was funny, I had so many movies because I had a list of a month of movies that I had watched. And so when I got to this movie called Shockproof, I was like, what was that about? And I go, I don't remember, but it was good. But I can't think of what it was about. It was about a parole officer falling in love with his parolee. So, and then they go on the lam because she like kills somebody, and then he's like, fuck my job, I'm going to go do this. And then all of a sudden the end, it's like, oh, okay, it was self-defense or whatever, but it was good. It was a Sam Fuller written, Douglas Sirk directed movie. So it was pretty good. And then I kept saying Ann Sheridan was in this movie Detour from the 40s that, again, you haven't seen. And God, my dogs are going crazy. My wife will shut them up in a second. But it was Ann Savage was in Detour, not Ann Sheridan. And if there's anything else that I miss, please let me know or send me some recommendations of some movies you want me to talk about. Or I have that voicemail that you can send, a voicemail, or you could send a text on there too. So it's 602-688-2403. And we had one last week, and then Matt sent us one. But I think I'm going to wait till James Bond comes up. But it's very funny. And if you have any questions or comments, or you have movies that you're like, hey, you and Jason should watch, blah, 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 then send them to mycellularheart@gmail.com or call that number and tell us what you think of the show. And newest movies that I watched at home or in the theater are, did you see Extraction?
Yes, I did. And I loved every sweaty, drippy second of it.
Especially when they fall off like that roof and then onto the car, and like
that was all one take, dude.
Yeah, it was like, oh, so awesome. And again, it was like John Wick, like directed by stuntmen. So
yeah,
it was awesome. And he did all that John Wick stuff. So, it was, all that quick gun stuff and
Brian Gunn shit all over it. He was like, oh, it sucked. And the stuff was like John Wick light. And I was like, no way, dude.
Here's what I was thinking. When I watched that, I was thinking, this is not as close as, but this is our Arnold. He could do Arnold type movies, just being quiet, like not saying shit,
right?
Like people, maybe not the one-liners, but he could be the action hero, not doing Thor, just doing some action movies.
Right.
Cool. Then I saw. Have you heard of this movie Arkansas?
No.
It's directed by Clark Duke from Time Machine.
Your dad?
Machine. yeah. But Hot Tub Time Machine with the short guy with the glasses,
Oh, okay, yeah, I know who that is.
is directed by him, and he's in it, and it's got Vince Vaughn, and it's pretty cool. It's a little gritty, and it's got Thor's brother in it, so Liam Hemsworth. So it's pretty cool. And then I saw you had recommended it, and we were going to watch it anyway. But Like a Boss, we were going to see it in the theater. It was funny. It was really good.
Yeah.
And that was, Selma Hayek. It's at Redbox. And then the other one's Netflix. Arkansas was Redbox. Breakdown Lane, because Joe told me to watch it at those movie guys, and it fucking sucked. But if you want to watch it, it's on Tubi. But please don't. It's horrible.
The
But if you
girl on
wanna
the
hear my
cover
take-
was hot.
Well, yeah. She was, although she was total bitch. Like, how am I supposed to be with this? Like, you and I have written movies and scripts, and you've gone further than me, but you write these scripts and you want your characters to at least be likable and
Right.
have people be like, yeah, root for them. And this girl, I was like, I don't give a shit about this girl. She's like, oh, it was a whole thing. But anyway, on those movie guys, I did a breakdown. This, you guys can check that out. Then I saw that Gretel and Hansel. Did you see this?
Oh, I just watched that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was okay, but my wife was like, "This is weird."
Yeah, it's weird, and it's just a slow burn.
Yeah, you're like, wait, like I'm like, when is the house going to be an oven? Like, when do they
Right.
realize, like, oh, we're in the oven? Like, what's going on? And then finally at the very end, you're like, oh, now they're in an oven. Like, oh my gosh, like the witches were cool, like all
Yeah.
that stuff was cool, but yeah. And that girl, I like that girl. I can't think of what she was in,
It.
but who is that girl?
She's the girl in It. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I saw Bombshell. That was good.
Yeah,
Did you
that was
see
good.
that one?
Yep.
That was up in the box. And then we saw one on Hulu. I like Numi Rapace. I've liked her since the original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and all those 3 movies. And Angel of Mine, where it was their baby dies, and then she's like, but here's what's weird. Like, my baby dies when it's an infant, and 7 years later, I see a little girl at a party, and I'm like, that's my daughter.
Oh man.
What the fuck? Like this, like now the kid's 7. How do you know that that's your daughter? So that was
Right.
part of me. We were like, but she was like, it was creepy where she'd be like petting her hair, combing her hair, and being like, do you like me? And it was like, what? And so then it turns out where it's like, I'll go ahead and spoil it for you. I told you there's be spoilers here. So if you want to watch it, jump ahead. It's a good movie, but will I rewatch it? No. But her husband, her and her husband is split. So he's like, you're crazy. Like, there was a fire at the hospital and the baby died. Like, I saw the cremation, I saw the ashes. Like, oh yeah, that's our baby. And so then she goes and like gets all like crazy, like stops taking her meds and goes. And then it turns out where she's in the house trying to get DNA from the little girl so she can take it to a DNA place. She gets hair out of the brush. Her and the woman get in a fight. It's a woman from Dexter, like Dexter's girlfriend at the end of Dexter. They get in a fight, and the woman ends up being like, I took the baby. Like, there was nobody there. There was a fire, and so I took the baby. My baby had died, so I took yours. I'm sorry. And you're like, what? And then all of a sudden, but it's good because now she can be like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You didn't believe me. So anyway, it was fun. But now I told you about it. Now you don't have to watch it.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did you see Jerry Seinfeld 23 Hours to Kill?
Yeah, that was really good too.
Really good. I really like that. And then my wife and I had been talking about Keanu, and we were like, we should buy that movie because we loved it in the theater. And then the other day I get home and she puts it on, and I'm like, where'd you get this? And she's like, oh, I bought it from like used whatever on Blu-ray for $5. And I'm like, oh, okay. So we watched that from 2016. That's really funny. I forgot how funny that was.
Yeah, I dig that movie.
And then just this morning, I watched Beastie Boys Story on Apple TV.
Nice.
That is really fucking good. I
Yeah.
really like that. That was really cool. But have you been watching anything that you want to tell me about?
No, man, just all the same stuff you've been watching.
All right. Okay, then. That makes it a quicker show. All right. So today Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, 1984. So first of all, me and Jason did Raiders of the Lost Ark on his show. I forget what number it was. Do you know?
I don't remember. No.
Anyway, if you go to Popcorn Promises podcast on wherever you get podcasts, you'll find Raiders of the Lost Ark. You can listen to that one. And then he called me the other day. Well, he texted me and he's like, "Hey, when do you want to do Temple of Doom?" And I was like, "Oh, do you mean your show or mine?" And he said, "Whatever." And so we said, "Okay, let's do mine. Then we'll do yours for Last Crusade if we wanted to. If you even wanted to cross promote, you probably hate me and you don't, so that's fine." And then we can do Crystal Skull either in that one or whatever. Like you said, I didn't hate Crystal Skull either, but there was the part with the chase where he's in the middle of both cars, which I thought in this movie, I'm like, wait a minute, Short Round's in the middle of the two cars, kind of the same.
But then Short Round doesn't go swinging across vines with monkeys either. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, let me catch my mom. Yeah, and but with this movie, it was more. But anyway, let's get to what it's about first before we get into that. So the plot: in 1935, Indiana Jones arrives in India, still part of the British Empire, and is asked to find a mystical stone. He then stumbles upon a secret cult committing enslavement and human sacrifices in the catacombs of an ancient palace. And this was from 1984, if I didn't say that. And it stars Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones, Kate Capshaw as Willie Scott, Ki Hoi Kwan as Short Round.
Nicely done, sir.
Thank you. Amrish Puri as Molaram.
Not as good.
Roshan, no. Amrish Puri. I think Amrish Puri. Anyway, maybe if I put an accent in there, if I become like racist, like
then you're racist, yeah.
Amrish Puri. Roshan Seth as Chowder Lal, and Phillip Stone as Captain Blumbart. And did you know Captain Stone? Did he look familiar to you? Did you look up who he was?
No, I did not.
The captain at the table when they're having dinner.
Yeah,
when they're eating the monkey brains. He was the waiter in the bathroom with Jack Torrance in the show.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, holy shit, yeah, cool. Written by Willard Hoyk and Gloria Katz, and they were both married. I don't know why they have different names, but maybe they're like me and my wife, which were married, but she's like, fuck you, I'm keeping my name. They wrote the screenplay. George Lucas came up with the story. So in developing the story, Lucas conceived of an opening chase scene with Indiana Jones on a motorcycle on the Great Wall of China, followed by the discovery of a lost world pastiche with a hidden valley inhabited by dinosaurs.
That would have been amazing.
Yeah. Another idea was to feature the Monkey King as the plot device, which I don't know the Monkey King. I'm wondering if it's like the monkey paw, like if that's part of, the monkey paw thing where it's like a bad curse, whatever.
Right.
However, Chinese authorities refused permission for them to film in the country, requiring a different setting. Lucas wrote a film treatment that included a haunted castle in Scotland, but Spielberg felt it was too similar to Poltergeist, so the setting transformed into a demonic temple in India. And Lucas came up with the ideas that involved a religious cult devoted to child slavery, black magic, and ritual human sacrifice. And this is what's funny. And if you watch the making of it, it's all true, which is crazy. But Lawrence Kasdan, he wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. He directed several great movies, wrote and directed White Earp and all those, was asked to write the script. He says, quote unquote, "I didn't want to be associated with Temple of Doom." He reflected, "I just thought it was horrible. It's so mean. There's nothing pleasant about it. I think Temple of Doom represents a chaotic period in both their, Lucas and Spielberg's, lives, and the movie is very ugly and mean-spirited." So it's like, I get that it is dark, but they put the humor in it. But, and then he hired these people to write the script. Lucas did, because of their knowledge of Indian culture, and Gunga Din served as an influence for the film. So that's an old Cary Grant movie that you have no idea about. That's okay. And then Steven Spielberg directed, of course. And I don't want to rush through this. You can jump in, but we're getting into the movie now. But first,
all right,
let me hit you with this. So Lucas said to Spielberg, he was like, "Oh, we need to do 3 movies. You directed the first one, but we need to do 3, and you need to direct all of them. And I have ideas for all 3. And Spielberg's like, "Okay, what are they?" And Lucas is like, he didn't really have any. I was like, oh, shit. and the movie was originally going to be called Temple of Death. And what was going on was Lucas was getting a divorce. He had just gotten divorced from his wife, and Spielberg had just gotten a divorce. So they were both like putting all this dark shit in there and being like, this will be cool. And then all of a sudden, you know, being like, oh, wait a minute. And this part's cool for us because we love Raiders of the Lost Ark. Anybody who does, the river raft and the minecart chase were going to be in Raiders, but then they were put in this movie. So the river raft would have been right before he would have jumped out of the plane. He would have jumped out of the plane because of whatever, and the raft would have hit the ground and then skidded in the snow all the way to her bar.
Oh,
and then,
cool.
yeah, so that would have been kind of cool. And then the minecart chase was going to be after the ropes get burned off and everybody's dead and they got to take the Ark back. Then they put on a mining car and they're escaping from Nazis to get back, you know, to get to safety.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that would have been neat. And then they wanted to bring Marion back, but then they decided, no, the indie movies should be like James Bond. They should have a different girl every time. And this is a fun part. I'm sorry to rush through this. I want you to intercede. You can tell me your dog's name here in a minute. Willie Scott is named after Spielberg's dog, just like Indiana Jones was named after Lucas's dog. And Short Round was named after the screenwriter's dog, which was named after a character in Sam Fuller's movie, The Steel Helmet. So there's a guy in there named Short Round. And it was George's idea to do the Busby Berkeley dance number in the beginning. And the dress was too tight for Cape Shaw to do any, like she studied all these dance moves and was like, I'm going to do awesome. And then they put the dress on her and she's like, I can't move in this thing. So all she could do was kind of do a little white guy jiggle, you know? Yeah, that's why her dance might be horrible. But anyway, you got anything? I'm getting ready to get into the movie now because I can see you fell asleep by me talking.
Nope, I was hanging on every fucking word.
I hope so.
As everybody listening to this is.
I hope so. So now we get into this synopsis. The way I've been doing this, Wikipedia, I put it up and then I drop in my facts and all that so that I don't have to go, what happened then, Jason? And Jason goes, no, then they went to Laoshe. No, then Laoshe again. 1935, Indiana Jones narrowly escapes the clutches of Laoshe, a crime boss in Shanghai, China, with his 11-year-old Chinese sidekick Short Round and the nightclub singer Willie Scott in tow. Indy flees Shanghai on an airplane that, unbeknownst to them, is owned by Laoshe. So I love that opening scene. Like, I like how it starts like right in it. And I remember watching it and you're like, holy shit, like this is awesome. Like, oh my God, Indy's in like this white suit. He's just badass. And, you know, he's got a buddy working for him and his buddy's got the gun on the guy. And, you know, and then they do that thing and then he's drinking and it hits you as a surprise when he's like, what's that? And he goes, it's the antidote to the poison you just drank, Mr. Bond, Mr. Jones. And it's so the part that I really love is the gong. Yeah. When the guy pulls the Tommy gun out and he jumps behind the gong and he chops it down, and then he just runs and grabs her. And even though like the dance sequence was in reverse, like they did that part in reverse,
right?
He used to do in those old movies, but it's like, come on, it's Indiana Jones. You don't have to do that, but I like that. I like and it was more comical. That's what they were saying. Like a lot of people didn't like because it was too funny, but I watched it again this morning and I thought it was fine. I still like it. I don't hate it. A lot of people hate this, like you and I've talked about. People are like, that movie sucks. But he's nodding in case nobody can hear him say yes.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
No, I totally agree with you. Like,
I was just thinking, like, I had Robert on when we did my friend Robert. He was on for Bond, the one in Vegas. I can't think of the name, but anyway, the one in Vegas, and with Sean Connery, and he was just like quiet through the whole thing, and I'm talking, and he's just like, and then Joe was like, I thought maybe there was nobody on with you, and then I told him, oh yeah. So anyway, diamonds are forever. Anyway, go ahead.
There you go, buddy. No, I love the opening of this movie. I love it when the opening of a big movie like this surprises you, where you're like, what the hell, where are we at and why are we there?
Yeah,
So to open it up with this big musical number, obviously Spielberg needed to get that out of his system, and so he picked a great place for it. And it's just a weird, funny, cool way to open it up. I really love the opening of it. And like you said, then it jumps right into that action sequence.
Yeah, and you're thinking like, wait, he's not in the jungle. What is he doing? And then you're like, oh, there's the antiquities right there. Okay, cool, and so cool. And then the best part coming up is when, they run to the plane. The guy's like, hey, I got the plane. That guy sounded like Anthony Daniels, didn't he? The guy that's like, get on the plane. I made you an arrangement. I'm like, is that Anthony Daniels? Because it sounds kind of.
It's Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, that was Dan Aykroyd. Okay. Because I was thinking, that sounds like, because I knew Dan Aykroyd was in this, and then I forgot when I watched it. So I was like, oh, yeah. But I love when he gets on the plane, and he's like, nice try, Lao She. And he closes the door, and it says, Lao She Air Freight. And you're like, fucking yes. And then you're like, what's going to happen now? And then you almost forget it because you're like, okay, they're on the plane. He's changed. What's going on? And then all of a sudden it's like, those guys jump out and they're like, hey, there's nobody on the plane. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
So cool. And while the three of them are asleep on the plane, the pilots dump the fuel and parachute out, leaving the plane to crash over the Himalayas. Indy, Shorty, and Willie discover the sabotage and narrowly manage to escape, which is, I love when Short Round just runs up. Like, for one, this whole film is filmed, like, of course, it's Spielberg, but it's filmed beautifully. It's got some cool shots in it. But when Short Round runs up to the camera and he's like, no parachutes. And you're like, holy shit. Like, yeah. And then he's like, and I did notice there's 2 times in this, but I'm sure all Short Round does is grab Indy's shit because he's like, get our stuff. That's all it is. And then you're wondering, like, where's Short Round in Raiders? Like, this happened before Raiders in the timeline. So how come he's not like, oh, I had this kid that I, whatever. He never mentions a kid. In Last Crusade, he's not like, I had a kid once that I used to watch. It's like, no, kid's gone.
Yeah. He, in case you haven't noticed, he doesn't take good care of his guides and stuff. They tend to wind up with spikes through them and
yeah. Yeah, very true. Yeah, that's why the kid knows, like, I got to be smarter than any of them. I don't want to be like Alfred Molina and all this stuff.
But again, Short Round being in there was so different for the movie, and it's so, like, from the outside, it's so weird that he has a little Asian kid hanging out with him. But in the movie, it just works. You don't question it for 1 second.
Well, and as a kid watching this, it's interesting because then you're like, oh, I identify with the kid.
Right.
He's driving a car. I wish I could drive a car. How? And she goes, how's he driving the car? And it cuts to the shot of him with the boxes on his feet, driving the car. And you're like, oh my God, that's so awesome. And just, him, that moment later on with him and Shorty where he like puts his hat on. He's like, I'm sorry, all that stuff. Like, it's just really good.
Yeah. I wished he was my dad. But
Short Round. You wish Short Round?
Short Round was my dad.
No food at all. Indy, Shorty, and Willie discover the sabotage and narrowly manage to escape by jumping out of the plane. My friend Joe hates this part, on an inflatable raft just before it crashes into the mountainside. I like, for one, that they have the plane crash like not way high, like it's low enough by the mountain, and what they did filming this scene, they put 3 weighted dummies in there, and then he went to this airstrip and was like, hey, can you guys figure out a way to make this raft inflate as you push it out? And they're like, okay. And they figured out something and they pushed it out, and he said, we filmed it. And he goes, and the thing stayed, like he said, I was surprised that it stays level, fully comes inflated, hits the ground. He goes, we did that in 1 take. We were like, awesome, love it.
Nice.
And that was it. And it's like, cool. And that is cool when you're watching it. You're just like on D&D, whenever I played Dungeons & Dragons, I would always try to think outside the box, which was kind of bad because the dungeon master had an idea. We used to play like Robotech, which was a Dungeons & Dragons also, but it was like, future robots and all these mechs and things. And there was one time when he's like, okay, you guys come up to a window and there's these two dogs on the other side of the door or the window, and they're barking at you, these two Dobermans. And so I'm like, I grab my friend, and we both just run and jump through the thing. Instead of trying to figure out where the key is, try to unlock it, we just jump through it. And he goes, okay, now he's got to figure out like hit points for the dogs. He's got to roll for that. He goes, okay, you killed one of the dogs and the other one's half injured. And then he's like, you could have done this. And then later, our mech was on the roof of an abandoned garage or something, and we didn't know it. And he's like, okay, so now what are you going to do? And he goes, you see your mech up on top of this building. So I go, we're going to take the chain link, put it on end, walk all the way up to the roof. And he goes, okay, I can roll for that. But, if you would have walked around the other side of the building, there's stairs going up to the roof. And I go, oh, shit. Okay. Sorry about that. But anyway, those are the things where I would be like, that's what's cool about it. It's like, okay, we got nothing. What do we do? I got an inflatable raft. And you see him throw that down. It says, inflate. And you're like, what? And he's like, get our stuff. And then he puts them in between, puts short round in between him and Willie, and they jump. And so cool. And, people say it's cheesy, but I love it. They ride down the mountain slopes, fall into a raging river, eventually arriving at the village of Maypur in northern India. And the man that is like the shaman, like the white-haired, receding hairline guy, he spoke no English. And Spielberg had to be like, okay, say, like darkness, and rub your eye. And then he would go, like darkness. That's why there's all these pauses, because he would go, say darkness, darkness. Okay, now say, they took our children, they took,
Right.
So it's really cool. And then the impoverished villagers believe that 3 have been sent by Shiva to retrieve the sacred Ingam or Lingam? Yeah. Stones stolen from their shrine, as well as the community's missing children from evil forces in the nearby Pankot Palace. During the journey to Pankot, Indy hypothesizes that the stone may be one of the 5 fabled Shankara stones that promise fortune and glory. And
fortune and glory.
They're all like, fortune and glory for like, you're like, okay, well, nobody's going to get fortune and glory. The trio receives a warm welcome from the Prime Minister of Pankot Palace, Chatter Lal. The visitors are allowed to stay for the night as guests, during which they attend a lavish but grotesque banquet given by the young Maharaja Zalim Singh. And the thing here, like, I remember this time watching a movie, it seems like every time I watch a movie, I'm like, it drags when he's in a suit. Like, I hate it.
Right.
And I was thinking, like, oh, man, this. And then I also remember, like, it drags when he's like a zombie, like, and I'm like, just get out of the zombie. But it wasn't. It kind of ran right through. Like, it's a good little action movie where he's not a zombie that long, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
He's in his suit for a little bit. He takes off his suit coat. He's still wearing that brown shirt underneath, and they get into the adventure. So it's very cool. I really like it. And the bugs that they ate out of were actually like plastic, and they were filled with custard.
Ugh.
So Spielberg was like, anybody who's grossed out by that, he goes, it was just custard that they were eating.
That makes it even grosser.
And the monkey brains. I hear a lot of people don't like custard. I can't think of what custard tastes like.
Jizz.
All I could think of was like a tapioca pudding is like chunky like my jizz, but, but maybe I'm not eating right. Maybe I eat too much coconut. And the monkey brains were custard with raspberry sauce mixed in. And then the soup had rubber eyes stuck to the bottom.
Oh, the soup messed me up, man.
So she had to she hit it with a spoon. She could never get it unstuck. Finally, they got a shot where the eyes came up, and they were just rubber eyeballs with little sticky things on them. And
the snake I can't look at to this day.
Oh, that snake it's a really cool thing because it's they just cut over. They go, now snake surprise, and she goes, what's the surprise? And they cut it open, and all these eels and things like start crawling out of it, and there's a guy eating 2 of them, and you're just like, oh my god, like how, like that's the worst is the snake. Like, the bugs, no problem, but that snake is like, oh, done so well.
And the colonel just kind of flicks one away with his spoon.
Yeah. He's just like, get away. I don't know what he ate. He was just like, get away. And Lau rebuffs Indy's questions about the villagers' claims that of his theory that the ancient Thuji cult is responsible, or Thuggy. I don't know if it's Thuggy
It's
or
the
Thuji.
Thuggy cult.
Thuggy cult. All right.
He says
So
it.
they're like West Coast. Is responsible for their troubles. And I love their cat and mouse. Like Indy is just staring at this guy. He's not like trying, and he's not playing softball. He's fucking, this is what I hear, this is what I think's going on. And they're like, and that guy's like, no, I don't know what you mean. You're crazy. It's all myths and stories. And even the Maharaji's like, I don't know what you're talking. There's been stories, but I never believed them. And then he's like, if I offended you, I apologize. And you're like, oh, that's cool. He's an archaeologist. He understands cultures. He gets that. And then, then they try to kill Indy.
Yeah. He doesn't want to have his nuts cut off. That's why he apologizes.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, exactly. They were like, what did that other, didn't they, they were going to cut off your head? No. Cut off your hands? No. And he kind of looks down and he goes, I came to an agreement. And it's like, oh, that's what they were going to cut off your dick. And
he goes, it was my misunderstanding.
My misunderstanding. Yeah. And then there's this part, and I remember I was like, oh, dude, go with the girl. Like, go with Willie. Like, dude, she wants you. Like, and then they get in that fight, and she's like, they're like, we'll wait 5 minutes and all this. And then he gets attacked, and while he's being choked, I love when she's like, you just might have missed the greatest adventure that you would have. And his eyes like light up, and he's like,
Even when I was 12, I was like, fuck her, Indy, fuck her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I was, how old was I then? Yeah, I was 13. I was like, do her, dude. Well, yeah, you saw it on cable. Yeah, like I said, I don't remember where I saw this, but I remember I liked it. After Indy kills the assassin, which is cool, like they have that fight, and then Short Round wakes up, which I don't know why he didn't hear the fight before that. He must be a sound sleeper. And then Indy like gets him with the whip around the neck and throws the whip up into the fan, and pretty cool. And
I always wanted to do that to my sister.
Yeah,
like just throw the whip around her neck and then throw it in the fan and see if it would pull her up.
Poor sister. I'm the only child, but well, that's the thing with these whips. Where I was in Mexico once, and this guy was like, "You want to buy a whip?" And I don't know if I told this story on your podcast, but he was like, he had this bull whip, and I was like, cool, and it was like 12 foot long, and I'm like, I could buy this whip, and it's black and white, so it wasn't brown, but it was black and white, and I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I go, how much? He goes 15 or maybe 20, and I'm like, no, and over there in Mexico, you bargain. That's the whole point of the thing. So I go, how about this? And I'm like, no, all I have is this. I have $10. No. How about 15? No, you get 5 from your friends. No, or you get 7. How about 17? How about 15? No. Finally, I think I had him maybe 13. Then he got down to 10, and I had the 10. And he's like, oh, and he stops me and he goes, okay, wait, how about, okay, $10. And then I really offend him, because then I'm like, no, because then I realized, what am I going to do with the fucking whip? I'm going to take it home and just be like, look at that. And then that'll be it. And I'll would have still had the whip. So, yeah. But anyway, I always wanted a whip, but you never use, like the way he can just pull it off of something. Like,
yeah.
Just like, yeah.
So I actually did buy a whip when I was in Mexico from one of those dudes. And I think I got it for $10.
Yeah.
And I went to a Halloween party as Indiana Jones, and we wound up whipping beer cans off the back with the whip. And I was showing everybody how to like do it. So yeah, they're cool. And the whole point of your story is null and void, because why do you have a whip? Because you have a fucking whip. That's why you have a whip.
That is true. Yeah. It's like I carry a Leatherman all the time instead of carrying this Leatherman.
You don't need a Leatherman. If you had a whip, you could do all the same things.
Yeah. I mean, my wife, honey, get those blinds down. Hang on.
Yep,
I got it. Honey, you fucked up our house. Hang on, let me change the light bulb. Yeah. That'd be awesome. No, that's and that's like he said, there's a part on the making of where he's telling Key he's like, the trick is you don't do it as hard as you can. You just kind of lightly do it, and it works.
Right.
And short round's like, I get it, Mr. Jones. And he goes, no time for whipping, Mr. Jones. Then they find these series of like tunnels and catacombs hidden behind a statue in Willie's room, and she's like, I'm right here with her boobs. And he's like, let me push on these boobs of this thing. And then they overcome a number of booby traps, and the spike room was Steven's idea from the old Republic Pictures serials, and I love the spike room.
I love it. Yeah.
What's funny about that, which we'll get to in the next movie, they have a spike room that's not as cool. But I love when Indy's hat like gets pushed, it's right almost at the end, and then she's like, I got it. And then they add that little touch, get him off me, and then bends over and hits it with her butt, and the whole thing starts over again. Like, shit.
Yeah.
And then that's where they do the thing where in the first one, he grabbed his hat before the door closed.
Yeah.
In the second one now, he grabs his hat before that thing closes on him. And then in the third one, what is it in the third one? I mean, he grabs his hat again, I think, or loses his hat.
He loses his hat when he goes off the cliff on the tank.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then it blows by him, yeah. And,
but so I actually have a story about this part where it is true that movies and media do affect minors, and they do stupid things because of stuff they saw in the movies. Because I was playing Indiana Jones, and I would hit my garage door closer, and then I'd run and try to slide under it before it would stop. And this is back in the 80s, before they had those fancy little lasers.
Yeah.
So I hit my garage door, and I went sliding, and it just caught me, dude, between the cement. I just like stopped instantly, and it just kept crushing me. And I was like dying, and I was like, I'm not Indiana Jones. And my sister was just standing there screaming, and I was like, get Dad. Like, and so my dad had to come out and smash the motor. But when he did that, it stopped grinding on me, but then it just like released all of its like tension onto me. Yeah, so I was just like squished. And then finally like some neighbor kids came over and helped my dad like lift the garage off of me. And they dragged me out into the driveway, and my dad runs in to call 911. And at the same time, my mom's coming home, and she comes within a half an inch of running over my head and popping it like a grape.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So that was my Indiana Jones adventure.
Who are all these kids? Yeah. Oh my God, that's great. And then you were like, "Where's my hat?"
They strapped me to a board and took me to the hospital. It was horrible.
Oh man. Well, that's the thing of it's like one time, like I said, I don't know if I told it on your show, but after watching Raiders of the Lost Ark one time, like on a re-release or something, I went to swing around in the bathroom at the theater, and on top of the beam was kind of like not a square. It like had these two sharp things on top. So when I cut my hand and like my skin came off a little bit, but I'm like, that was all supposed to be cool. Me jumping from the toilet to the thing to swing out the door, and it didn't work. And yeah, that's the thing. You're like, when I started this, I had the best intention, but when I got trapped, I was like, I should have done something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a great story. The trio reaches an underground temple where the Thuggies worship Kali with human sacrifice. They watch as the Thuggy chain one of their victims in a cage, and the high priest Molaram uses his evil magic to rip out the victim's still beating heart. While the victim is still alive, he is slowly lowered into a lava pit, burning him alive, with his heart held in Molaram's hand, burning as well. And that part, I was like, how did they do that? Like, what do you make that of? Like, you have flash paper that'll like burn quick and you don't hurt your hand. But this was like, he was holding it and it was on fire, and it didn't look, like computer, like process or nothing like that. And it was just like really cool, like as it slowly starts smoking, and then, and that was the part where
when Molaram reaches into his chest and pulls his heart out, and then it closes back up. That was like an image that like stayed with me as a 12-year-old.
Yeah, you're like, well, and that's where I heard, and I'll get to it later, but that's where I heard that like a 13-year-old or somebody or a 12-year-old had seen this and like threw up or passed out or something from how frightening it was. And then that's when they decided to do PG-13 because of this movie. But yeah, it's one of those kind of like you were saying about Goonies on your episode, your last Goonies episode. Really good. Everybody check out Popcorn Promises. Your Matrix episode was really good as well. But it's a thing of like your kid watching this. Like, no, it's got some dark shit in it where it's like, you know, like the whole voodoo doll thing and like, yeah. And it's those things like just those images stick with you. Him pulling the heart out, Indy on the bridge, you know, Indy being burnt by Short Round, like all that stuff. Just you remember all those little things. That's why I love movies.
I love movies.
Yeah, I know, right? They discover that Molaram, who has plans for world domination, and the Thuggies are in possession of 3 of the 5 Shankara stones, which were hidden in the catacombs by a Thuggy priest when the British raided their temple to put an end to their activities and have enslaved the children to mine for the last 2, as well as to mine jewels to fund their operation. So yeah, all those stones, when they get together, they light up all the diamonds inside, and he's explaining to her, and I love how she's like so freaked out by what's going on that she's like looking away and like being quiet and just being like, oh my God. And then as soon as he's like, they're full of diamonds, and she's like, wait, diamonds? Wait and all these girls, I mean, granted, it was the 80s, and that's how they made women. Like she said, through the whole thing, she was screaming.
Yep.
Steven Spielberg had to show her how to scream because she was like, I don't get what you mean. He goes, just like like Fay Ray and King Kong. And she's like, I don't know what you mean. And same thing with Sharon Stone. It's like nothing means anything until it's like, here's a jewel, here's a diamond. Oh, now I'm interested. Anyway, very funny. As Indy tries to retrieve the stones, which is cool. That's another where you're like, oh, we're back to Indy, like climbing, like slowly, like swinging across, and he's onto the thing. And that whole set was really good. When you put this movie next to the next movie coming up, King Solomon's Mines, you're like, holy shit. Like Spielberg said, like they had the mine car thing. They would just change the lighting so it looked like they were in a different part. It was the same little hump, but the lighting was changing. You thought, oh, they're somewhere else now.
Right.
Very cool. So I love that whole set, like that big giant set. And he swings in and he grabs the stones, and he takes a little long of like, wow, beautiful, you know. And then Shorty and Willie get captured, and then they're separated. Indy is whipped and forced to drink a potion called the Blood of Kali, causing him to enter a trance-like state and mindlessly serve the Thuggies. And Willie is prepared for sacrifice, while Shorty is whipped and put to work in the mines alongside the children. So that was a cool scene where they're both being whipped. The kids being whipped by like a cat of nine tails, and then he's being whipped by the boy, and he's being whipped by an adult. You know, all that stuff. Very cool.
They should have switched it up, because then it would have been all sexual and hot.
And did you notice that that would have been? Did you notice that? Did it remind you? Because it reminded me with Indy being tied with his back toward that rock.
Yeah.
When they're gonna make him, it reminds you of it, Empire Strikes Back, when he's tied up, when he's being forced to tell.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tortured.
And his hair looks the same almost, and yeah. But yeah, very cool. And then go ahead. What?
No.
And Shorty breaks free with a rock, just like, oh, I'm free. Shorty breaks free and escapes back into the temple, where he burns Indy with a torch. But before all this jumps through it. They strap her into the thing, and they're going to put her into the fire. Now, right when they open that thing, all that heat coming up there, like, that would almost give you,
Not to mention that thing was just dipped in lava, so that metal is hotter than a fucking pancake iron.
It was all
waffle iron.
red. When they pulled it out with that guy, it was all red and glowing, and then they put her in it and strap her in, and you're like, okay. And she got so close where, people are like, we can't even go to the edge of a volcano to look down because it's so hot. You can't even go up to any lava because it's so hot. And they're just like, she's like 20 feet away and like, help.
Yeah.
So Indy was the one that straps her in there, and she's like, help, help. And he isn't listening to her, and she spits in his face.
Again, very sexual the way he wipes it off.
I just noticed it was kind of a nonchalant way, but yeah, I believe now that I think about it, yeah, because he licked his fingers.
Yeah.
Fucking on. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Short Round shows up and burns Indy with a torch as he's like trying to beat up Short Round, and then he's like, wait, stop, I got him. And I'm thinking, like, this guy's a zombie a second ago.
Yeah.
Not talking. Now all of a sudden he's like, wait, and they're like, okay, we'll wait. And then he's like, winks at Short Round, which is a cool moment when he's like, I'm back. And then that's cool when they're hugging. Like I said, that's that part. And the escape is cool. Short Round's escape after he breaks his chains and he runs out, and all the kids are like, nobody's noticed him. A hole in the ceiling, watching him, and they're all cheering for him. Yeah, look what I did. So that was cool. After fighting off the guards and defeating Lal, Indy stops Willie's cage and cranks it out of the pit just in time to save her from the fire, while Molaram escapes via a trapdoor under the Shankara Stones altar. Indy retrieves the stones, and the three return to the mines to free the children. And that's a really cool scene, even though people go, oh, it's cheesy. He hit that guy and he slid all that way. It's like, yeah, like you. So they're pushing that cart, and the light slowly, like that little head lifts him up, and he's just standing there. And then all of a sudden, you hear this punch, and that guy just slides through the rocks. I was thinking, I was like, did that guy run and slide? And then I'm like, they probably just pulled him. And as Indy fights a hulking overseer, which I think you told me on the Raiders episode, and I did see it on the making of, that was the same guy in the plane.
Yeah.
Plane fight.
The big Nazi guy.
Yeah.
And he's also in the bar scene. He gets shot in the middle of the head, and it drips down his his fedora, or his I don't know what he called it.
Down his nose, down his I
was trying to think of the name of the hat, but
his wrap, his
turban.
Yeah. His
I was trying not to be racist, and I was like, I think all those words are racist.
Yeah. Well, it's again, to jump forward to that movie, she's like, look here, camel jockey. And you're like, whoa, fuck. And the kid, the Maharaji, he's also under Molaram's control. He tries to cripple Indy with the voodoo doll. And so that part's cool, like that whole fight. And whenever Indy's like starting to fight, and then all of a sudden, and all that. And what's interesting, Harrison herniated his back during this scene. This was like he said,
he really twists his back like he's in pain.
And he said, first of all, riding on those elephants in the beginning, he said, you're riding right there on their shoulders blades. And he goes, like, riding for an extended period of time like we did, he goes, all of a sudden I was like, I'm torn, like I feel like I'm being torn apart, like this is no good. And so during this fight scene, he herniated his back and had to be sent back to LA because they were like, Spielberg's like, Lucas, he's fucked up, like his back's hurt. And he goes, let me fly down there. And he flew over there, and he said, Harrison's just like laying in a bed, and he's like, okay, we need to get you to LA and stop production right now. So they finished the fight with a stuntman, Vic Armstrong, who did like the Bond movies. I think he did the jump from the Spy Who Loved Me. He did that jump off the cliff, and he did the jump off the Maybe off the Eiffel Tower. So that was cool. And then when Ford came back, they did all the shots of like just his face, like all the stuff on his face. So it was 80% the stuntman, 20% Harrison Ford. So it was very cool. Shorty knocks the doll away and burns the kid to break the trance. And a restored Indy escapes and leaves the overseer to die in a steamroller, which this is a thing where, again, we were talking about how as kids, this image, in your head, it's a thing of that he looks like he kind of wants to save the guy, but he kind of doesn't. But he's holding on to the chain, and the guy is being pulled in. And it's not that the guy just gets pulled into a steamroller. It's that it's rough, and the guy's like, dig, 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 dig.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Like, that's how it would be. Like, oh.
Yeah.
And then he just gets pulled on, and then Indy gets pulled up, and you're like, oh, sweet.
And then when the stone rolls over red, you're like, oh, it's too much.
Yeah, you're like, holy shit. And then Singh tells Shorty, take the left mine. And he's like, okay. And then Indy's just like, I'm making this up as I go. And he's like, the left one, not the right one. And you can see like the left one's blue, nice. The other one's red.
That's what I love though about Indiana Jones is that he's constantly fucking up, and then he just fucks up in the right direction usually. Yeah. It just works out. It's just like jumping out of the plane with a raft. Like, is this gonna work? I don't know, but I'm gonna. These two people are trusting me, so I guess we'll try this. If we got it, well, better than slamming into a plane. I'm in a mountain. The trio escape from the temple in a minecart, pursued by thuggies, while Molaram orders a huge water cistern dumped in an attempt to flood them out. After barely escaping the deluge, they are again ambushed by Molaram. But this jumped ahead because I love that chase, even though people don't like it because it cuts to the miniatures, but it's blended so well where you don't. Good, yeah. And then where he's like don't use, we're gonna have to not use the brakes, that'll make us go faster. Like, he explains that to the audience and to them, and it's like, okay. And then they're going, then he's like, okay, now we need the brakes, and Short Round's pulling on it, and the handle breaks off, and you're like, oh shit. And Indy gets around on the front and puts his foot against the wheel to stop, against there's a brake there, so he pushes on the brake to make it stop, and then the brake breaks off and it burns through his shoe. Yeah.
And then his shoes, they got that cool shot of him, like his shoes, like smoking. Like, you always wonder, like, how do they do that? Like, is that dry ice? What is that? And then he's like, water. And then all of a sudden the big thing of water comes, and you're like, oh, so great. So awesome. And then they run out the side, and they're like, okay, good. We avoided the water. And it ended at the end of the tunnel and came back, and they're like, oh shit. And they run out the front, and then all those beams coming out. That's another scene that you always remember is like, you're shooting out, you're like, you could be pushed, when you don't know it's just a movie, you're like, this one of those beams could have knocked her off and she could have fell.
Right.
And nearly escaping Molaram and his henchmen on a rope bridge high above a crocodile infested river. I love this bridge scene, like, out of all, that's why I'm using this image to promote the show, because I love him with the sword, like, waiting.
Yeah.
And it's just so fucking cool. And I like that he can speak Chinese to Short Round in India. Nobody else knows what they're talking about, but Short Round knows him enough where he can see him wrap his leg around the rope. And he go, hang on, lady, we go for a ride. Like, he's ready for it. Like, he's not like, Indy, are you sure? Like, he's just like, okay. Like, this is my guy that takes care of me, I guess. Okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
And that's what's so cool, is he just making it up. Just like when he grabbed the rocket launcher on Raiders, he's like, I'm going to destroy the thing. Like, fuck it. Like, I don't care anymore. And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing here. It's just like, so cool. And so I love that I just love that thing where he's like, I forget the word, but he says that word to Short Round, and Short Round's just like grabs the rope with his hand and tells her, and she's like, oh my God. And there was a dam being built close by. So they had all these engineers over there, and they were like, hey, can you guys make us like a rope bridge? And they were like, okay. So they built this rope bridge for him that totally worked, and they could walk on it and everything. Spielberg's like, I'd walk out about 40 feet, turn around. I don't like heights. I'd turn around, come back. He goes, Lucas was the same way. He goes, our camera guy was even like, no, but he had to go out there to film this stuff. So I commend him for that. But it's just, and again, with this thing, when he cuts that rope, it's a thing where they set up these dummies and they go, now we're going to blow this bridge. It just got built for us. It's like, if these wires, whatever they're called, so they're underneath the regular wire that they built, they put wires in there to cut it. And they were like, okay, we're going to hit it. And if it doesn't work or half works, then we got to redo it. How's it going to work? All this stuff. But they put those dummies on it, and they sent out for these dummies that move as they fall. And the dummies never came. Frank Marshall, the stunt guy or whatever, the guy in charge of the special effects, was like, "Hey, Frank Marshall, what's going on about? Are we getting those dummies?" And he's like, "Can you make them?" He's like, "I guess I can try." So he goes, "So I made these things that they'll move, and if you see when they're falling, they're like moving as they fall. It's like their legs and their arms. It's like, holy shit!" But it all happened in one take. They were like, they had like 5 or 6 cameras going, said, "Ready, go." Boom, and it worked. It was, it may not be as good when they cut to like on the set and the
Right.
painting, or when they're hanging there in a set and you're like, but still, it's very cool of him on that bridge. And another thing before that was when he grabs for his gun and there's no gun.
Yeah,
like,
that's a classic indie moment.
Those 2 guys swinging the swords, and you're like, oh, he's gonna just shoot him, and he pulls his gun and there's no gun, and he's like, oh fuck. And then one guy with the other guys looking, the other guy's fighting him, and then there's that almost Star Wars moment when he comes running up to the camera, and all of a sudden his face changes and he turns around and runs, and all the guys are coming after him. It's like him and Chewie going down that hallway. So cool. That's another thing. I wonder how many times going to Star Wars that he had to jump through that door that was closing.
Oh yeah.
If he ever biffed it, or if he made it every time. It was like, because I would have been like, oh, I've tried to jump those chains at a parking lot, and sometimes I biffed it. So anyway, so Indy cuts a bridge. Yeah, we said that. As he and Molaram struggle over the stones, he invokes the name of Shiva by proclaiming him to be a traitor, causing them to glow white hot. Molaram burns his hands on the stone, causing him to lose his grip and fall to be devoured alive by the crocodiles below. So that was cool, where he's like, you're not using these for the, like, again, Indy's an archaeologist, and he knows here's what the meaning and the history of this is, and you're using it in the wrong way. And then, and then starts chanting stuff, and then they glow, and then the thing burns, and he catches one, and it's not hot. All of a sudden it's hot, and then it's not. So
Indy has more calloused hands.
Yeah. And then, so 2 of those fall, and Indy catches the one, climbs up just as a company of British Indian Army riflemen summoned by Singh arrive and open fire on the thuggy archers trying to shoot Indy, which is cool. While he's climbing up, all those arrows are hitting. He's like, what the, holy shit. Yeah. And, gaining the upper hand, the British Indian Army quickly dispatches the thuggies and forces them to flee. Indy, Willie, and Shorty return to Mayapur with the children and give the missing stone back to the villagers. And there's another thing that harkens back to, and I know that they probably didn't do this on purpose, but remember on Blade Runner, there's a part where Indy had his fingers broken by Roy Batty, and so he's got them taped. And there's a part where he's hanging off the cliff, and he kind of puts his finger up on the edge.
Yeah. And
kind of how this was there, all of a sudden you see the stone come up, and then his hand come up to try to, very cool. So the MPAA were going to give it an R rating, and Spielberg said there should be a rating between like PG-13 or PG-14. So they made it PG-13 because he was good friends with that guy, that main guy that was in charge for a while of the MPAA. I forget his name. And also, out of the 3, this is Spielberg's least favorite. So that's out of the first 3. I don't know how he feels about the 4th one.
Right. Yeah. I know that he did the 3rd one as like trying to make up for what he felt the 2nd one lacked. But I think that was a lot too, that it just didn't get very good reception at the time. And so, Spielberg was doing that like sour grapes thing. Like, yeah, I don't like it either. I think we could do better, And I mean, I think out of the 3, it's the silliest, but for me, it's the most fun one to watch.
Yeah.
Like whenever I'm just like, I need Indiana Jones, but I just want it to go by fast to be awesome. Then it's Temple of Doom, dude. And it's just got one iconic sequence after another. Yeah. And I think it's the longest one where we get Indiana Jones like in his costume being Indiana Jones too.
Yeah. And it's just, it's a thing where it's just like you and I said before, just on our own time, about number 4. No matter what they did, 4 would have been panned.
Yeah.
Just like Force Awakens was panned because no matter what you do, you're gonna get shit on. It's it's too much like the first one. Yeah, but that was fan service and everybody loved it. So
Right.
Except for Brian Gunn, but so now you're saying, Philip, why King Solomon's Mines? Why is that the next movie? Well, here's what Richard Chamberlain said about the film. Quote, King Solomon's Mine is not a remake of the old Stuart Granger trek through the jungle. It's a sensational script, very much a Raiders of the Lost Ark type of movie, very tongue-in-cheek and full of adventures and stunts. Bullets flying, lions eating people, witches up in the trees, all that stuff. So, So let me get to this, and then I'm going to let you run this because So I'm talking to Jason today, and I'm like, well, I gotta still watch this movie. And he's like, I can save you time. I can run this, and you can, And I'm like, no, I want to watch it. So I had it playing. Then I went and took a shit, left it running, came back. It was like, okay, I didn't miss anything. Watched the rest of it. There were parts where I'm like, wait, how did that guy die? And I rewound it a little bit. But anyway, yeah, it's not very worth it. But if you want to, it's on Vudu for free with ads. So let me get through the synopsis, who's in it, and then we'll get to this. King Solomon's Mines, 1985, fortune hunter Allan Quartermain teams up with a resourceful woman to help her find her missing father lost in the wilds of 1900s Africa while being pursued by hostile tribes and a rival German explorer. Stars Richard Chamberlain as Allan Quartermain, Sharon Stone as Jessie, which was funny because she was cast from The Misunderstanding. Did you hear about this?
Yeah.
Where he was like, give me that Stone woman. And he meant Kathleen Turner and not Sharon Stone. And they were like, we got Sharon Stone. Herbert Lom as Colonel Bachner. John Rice Davies as Dogati. Ken Gampu as Umbopo. And June Buthalizi as Gugula. Yeah, I guess that's Rich. Well, I wrote some of these names down before I saw the movie, so I was like, how deep do I go on the cast?
Yeah.
Written by Gene Quintano and James R. Silke wrote the screenplay, and then H. Rider Haggard wrote the novel back in 1885. So this came out 100 years after the book. And it's directed by J. Lee Thompson, which I was thinking might have directed Remo Williams, but I'm not sure. But anyway. So now you can go ahead, because I did see this movie. I have everything written down, but starts out, though, right away. Like, it doesn't lead to her showing up, like, I need my father found. He disappeared, da-da-da. It's just right there. They're already in it, and they're looking for her father. Like, I like that. But it's a comedy, everybody. You need to know that this is a comedy. It's not an action-adventure.
Is it a comedy, though? Did they know they were making a stupid-ass movie? Or because Richard Chamberlain is playing it like, man, he's the man of the hour.
Well, and here's what they say about these movies. They say that, you need to, even if it's a shitty movie, if you come at it seriously, like, it'll come off better. But just like playing a bad guy, like, you need to be like, okay, I understand Thanos' idea. Like, this is what I'm going with. But it's a thing of, I could see this when the same people did that movie called Firewalker. And that had that same kind of humor in it, but was a better movie than this one. And so, yeah, I don't know if they knew they were making a comedy, but I think they did, because there's a part where they're going to torture her father. And they're like, tell us, or we're going to torture her. Right. And she's like, don't tell him anything, Daddy. And they start twisting her arms pretty hard. And she's like, well, tell him a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, okay.
This movie, though, is such a blatant ripoff. I mean, there are like direct scenes ripped off from Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
His costume is exactly Indy Jones, except for he put like a leopard print bandana on his fedora.
His hat. Yeah. And he doesn't wear a leather jacket, but yeah.
Because they couldn't afford the leather jacket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one time they said, this movie cost $5 million. He said, more like $2.50.
It was bad. And it's like, you can watch it now and enjoy that it's like a bad movie.
Yeah.
But back then, you would have been like, fuck this movie, because you're only like a year away from Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
So
yeah, me and my friend Joe, we went and saw this in the theater, or me and my friend Dave, and we thought like, oh, this is going to be great, because we saw the trailer and it looked kind of cool. And then we're watching it. We're like, what is this shit? Like, what the fuck? Like, oh my God. Like, him on that train when he's trying to save her dad, and then
Jesus.
they shoot through the roof, and he's like dancing,
Right.
and it's like, it's just, and then him going into the car. It's on the trailer where he busts in. He's got his gun, and then they all put their guns on him, and he's like, "Nice reflexes, boys." And then he walks in. He's like, "Hey, give me that little trumpet, dun 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 dun." For
Right.
he's a jolly good fella, and they're all like, "Yay!" And then walks on through. Like,
Here's the thing, though. If this movie would have been like Naked Gun or like Hot Shots,
Right,
it would have been amazing. But they were
Yeah.
trying to make an honest to God action movie.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just rip off Indiana Jones.
yeah, they were like, let's put a little humor in it, do it just like Indy, because like you said, there's a scene in the beginning, she gets taken and rolled up in a carpet, and he sees one person carrying a carpet as opposed to everybody on Raiders carrying their little laundry carpets. And so he goes after, he unravels that thing, there's nobody in there, and then he just goes, and he's going through this village, and you're like, on this and like already, and then even on she falls on the thing, and that's going away on the cart, and he goes to, and all of a sudden he just happens to be right where the cart goes by, and she falls out the back, and it's like, oh my god, like horrible.
The first thing, this movie starts off, the first thing you see, you're like, already, this is going to be a lame Indiana Jones ripoff. And then the first thing you see is fucking Sala. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
What are you doing, sir? Why would you slum it like this?
Yeah. You were like, who's a cheap guy that we can get from that movie? Oh, okay. Yeah.
I could understand if he did this movie and then he did Raiders.
Yeah.
He's like, I've moved up. But no, he moved down.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's how I used to feel back with, remember he was on that TV show Sliders.
Yeah.
And I remember I was like, why is he on this? This is a shitty thing. He should be in better stuff. But yeah, it's so, but anyway, continue.
It's upsetting.
Yeah.
Sharon Stone in the beginning of this movie, it like cuts to them in the forest or in the like in the jungle, and she's just fucking tripping on every branch and getting hit in the face with every fucking leaf. And she's just like, oh my God, like just the worst girl ever.
Yeah.
And then all she's doing is fucking asking questions so that he can explain the plot to her.
Yeah.
He's like, what's that? He's like, it's an airplane. She's like, what's that? And he's like, an airplane. And she's like, why? Why is it there? And he's like, well, it's probably doing this. Like,
yeah.
Everything she said. And then she's like, why? What? Who? How?
Yeah. Why are we here looking for my father? We haven't found my father yet. Oh, okay. Because we are looking for him and we have to, like, oh, and then all the dynamite stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh my God, dude. So they go to this town, and then all these little black kids get around Sharon Stone. She gets all freaked out. She's all like, get away from me, little black kids. And then she gets pushed into a shop. And then that's actually like the shop she's supposed to be in. But the shopkeeper pretends like he doesn't know who she is or anything. And she's like, I know my father was here. And he's like, I don't know what you're talking about, blah, 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 blah. But then she fucking calls the guy she calls him an Arab camel jockey.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
I was like, holy shit. I'm like, this got away. Like, okay.
And then right after, Chamberlain pins the guy against the wall and calls him a dirty towel head.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't get that. Yeah. I was more focused on the when they're like the part that was kind of good but still sucked because they killed a character that you didn't really give a shit about, was when he's like, what's this? He goes, oh no, it's not for sale. He goes, a priceless mummy you're not gonna sell, bullshit.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, oh shit, her father's in there, he's dead. He goes, this is still wet, it's been here for days, and you're like, maybe he's still alive. And then he pops it open with his knife, and then she's like, oh, Jimmy, that was my dad's buddy Jimmy, his helper. And it's like, I don't give a shit. Like, who cares? Like,
it's funny too because they do the reveal and the music as if like dun dun dun, like we're supposed to like be like, who is this guy? Yeah.
I'm like, is that her father? Because he's pretty young. And then it's like, no.
We should talk about the movie or the music. Jesus Christ, it's Jerry Goldsmith He's a great fucking composer, but he was really slumming it on this one and just doing his best trying to make a John Williams score.
Just doing, what's in it? What's an action song? Oh yeah, dun 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 dun. You know, it's like making it light.
It was like Vanilla Ice trying to say that he didn't sample fucking Under Pressure for Ice Ice Baby. You know, he's all, no, that song goes dun 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 doo dee, and mine goes do 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 da.
Yeah, exactly. Oh. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was like Jerry Goldsmith. Holy shit! But yeah, it's a thing where I think, and that's why it didn't. And they filmed both movies together. So they filmed this one, and then Allan Quartermain in the Mines of Gold or City of Gold.
That's the only reason the second one got filmed, is because they just filmed it together.
Filmed them both together, and then they were gonna make a third one, and they never did. And then before Gollum died, or whatever his name was, Richard Chamberlain was ready to make a third movie where it would have been like his daughter or somebody that he would go to get. And then Gollum died, or whatever Globus or Gollum, one of them died. And so now it's like, okay, but it's like, you don't know what kind of movie you're making. You're making like a comedy, but you're trying to do like action, but you're doing goofy action. Like,
right.
You know, when she's fighting, she goes to swing that bottle back, hits him in the head while he her, and it's like, and even, you know, at the end, not to jump, but there's that thing where he's got the fire and he hits his back and he sets on fire. Like, come on, like, what's going on? Oh, this whole thing.
That's some Looney Tune shit right there.
But it's the thing that, like you said, it makes you go, were they making a comedy? Because it's got some, you know, you say these one-liners, but are they supposed to be like cool one-liners like Arnold? And they're just hitting like flat, like, you know. She pretty much sums up the movie by saying nobody thinks those are funny except for you. They're almost drowning, and she's like, "You're the only one."
True. So they get into it with this guy at the store. They find out that he does have the map that her dad was looking for that is going to lead him to King Solomon's mine, which is beyond the titties of the statue.
Yeah. They're like, "Oh, this is the map, the front of the statue." Yeah, you go from the vagina up through the mountains to the mouth or whatever. It's like, oh my god,
it was very sexual. But then that guy winds up shooting at them, and Richard Chamberlain just fucking pulls out some dynamite.
Yeah,
I was like, you never bring a gun to a dynamite fight.
yeah, exactly.
But he fucking throws the dynamite up on top of a shelf, and the dude he's trying to get away at first, and then he fucking decides he's gonna climb up there and get it, and he says, "I got it," right before he fucking explodes.
Yeah, which, and then that blows Sala and what's her name right out the door.
Yeah, you know, Looney Tune style.
And so it's like, okay, that's goofy, and then it's like that's Chamberlain's thing, like this dynamite. Like then later he throws the dynamite behind him, and they're like, oh my god, he's like, don't worry, it's a dud, and then it blows up. Right. Oh, well, it's good to have anyway. It's like, what the fuck? Like
that was his fucking whip. His whip was his dynamite, which is so stupid. And I said, you know, Quarterman's really loose with his dynamite safety because he freaking chucks it into the car to get those guys out. And then he hops in the car but forgets to put the dynamite out.
Yeah, I was like, he didn't throw it out. He just gets in it and takes off. Yeah. Oh.
Then they wind up on a train because that's where they're holding her dad. And that whole thing is ridiculous. When they're beating her dad, they're just hitting him in the forearms.
And right before that, where he's like, I'll say, he says those 3 words. He goes, I got 2 words to say to you, but da da. And the guy's like, that's 3 words. And then he's like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. It's like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of movie am I in? And it's the thing of the train's coming, and he's like, it'll stop. And she's like, no, it's not going to stop. It'll stop. It goes like 3 times of him being like, it'll stop. Right. And it doesn't stop. And you're like, we know where this is going. We know it's not going to stop. You guys are going to have to run and chase it. Like, oh. And then getting up on the roof and.
Yeah. Getting on the roof, but then getting underneath.
Torch. Oh my God. The underneath was, I'm like, oh, he's going to sneak up and help the father. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, he's being chased.
Right.
And the German guy underneath there, and he starts kicking the guy. And then they're, it's really shot where their heads are sticking out, but still the rock's coming, and you're like, I know nobody's going to get hurt. They're going to pull inside before the rock comes. And then that guy's thrown off, and he's and that's it.
Well,
It's like,
they're underneath the train, and it looks so bad, and it's obviously green screen in the background flying by.
Yeah.
And then he pulls on some handle, like a built-in handle that like releases steam into the Nazi's face.
yeah.
I was like, why would that be under the train?
Only the conductor does that when they pull into the station. You always see the steam come out from the motor, and it's like, and all of a sudden he just pulls the thing. I'm like, how would that work? But also with that, around here is when I was like, I see what Jason means. Don't waste your time. It was when he drags behind it.
Oh man,
Indiana Jones.
It's just absolutely blatant.
Yeah, and he's being drugged by a little rope or something that he's holding on to, and he's being drugged along the between the train tracks, and then all of a sudden he puts one foot on one side and one foot on the other, and then his feet are actually on the top of the thing from down at the level of the beams, and then all of a sudden you see him slowly raise up on this rear projection, and his face comes into screen, and now he's skiing on the fucking rails. And that's when I was like, I got to go take a shit. And I was like, I'm done. Like, I don't need this. And that music, dun, 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 while he's getting up to the thing. And you're like, oh.
And that's the thing. That's where I'm like, these guys think they're really slick right here. They're like, we're one-upping Indiana Jones. Like, he's behind a train instead of a truck. And now he's going to ski across the back. Let's see Harrison Ford do this.
Yeah, you can't do this. Yeah.
I said, there's obviously a lot of missed punches in this movie that they just let go. Where like a guy swings and he's just a mile away from the face, and the dude's like, oh, and like throws himself backwards. Especially Sharon Stone.
Well, and even that part, there was a part in the town where somewhere in there where he hit a guy in the town of this movie, not the movie, the town. He hit a guy and the guy falls, and you could have made it. You would have thought as a movie like this, you would normally have like somebody have their little store right there. And when he punches a guy, he'd go through it. But no, the guy goes, it's just a little awning right there. And the guy falls just right under the awning, just like falls on the ground, and there's nothing. And you're like, where's the big payoff of like, this is one of the big baddie kind of guys. But all the punches and the fighting, and you're like, oh, it makes you realize watching movies like this where you could have made it. I understand your best intentions were at heart, but come on, you guys, especially with the Cannon group, they were just like, let's punch out some movies. Boom, boom, boom.
They didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
So it turns out the Germans are still, the whole time all this is going on with Chamberlain, the Germans are still trying to torture her dad. Except now she's in there with him. Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but does the German not threaten to fuck her dad?
I didn't remember that part. What did he say?
So she is like, what are you going to do? And he's like, don't worry, little miss. I don't plan on doing it to you. And looks at her dad. And then he's like, oh.
Yeah.
And then he's like, but I guess in the port in a storm or whatever he fucking says. And he just starts pulling his dick out, And then I was like, I think he's going to rape her, but he just threatened to fuck her dad.
And they keep playing the thing of them whipping the guy, but the whip breaks. They beat him with these riding
like 3 times, right? They're like, what you did again and again.
And they hit him a couple more times. Oh, you broke it again. It's like, okay, are you trying to get like, is that supposed to be a joke, or are we supposed to believe like you beat him so much that you broke the whips, this poor old man?
I have no idea what their hope was. So they wind up going on the all this other stupid shit, but they wind up on an airfield.
Yeah,
and oh my god, was that the worst fucking scene I've ever seen put on film, man.
I may have been in the bathroom at that time or somewhere, but
Jesus, dude.
I saw the one with the crocodiles when they're lowering him, when all of a sudden you're like, what? They split him up from this village, and all of a sudden you're like, where did he go? And she's like, and everybody kind of spreads out, and the shaman comes up, and then all of a sudden it shows him hanging upside down, and she's like, no, no. And you're like, what's going on? And then they lower him into the crocodiles, but then he gets loose from his ropes, and then all of a sudden, is saved. And it's all like rear projection where he just shot from above with the crocodiles underneath him. And so bad.
So bad. So bad.
I will say, anybody who hasn't seen Jason Bromley's Green Lantern, way better than this movie.
Yeah, for sure. The effects are way better.
Yeah,
like they're blended better.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so the scene with the airplane was so bad. Sharon Stone gets in the plane, and then she's so dumb because she's blonde that she's pulling the ignition or the
landing gear.
No, what do you call it? The throttle. She's pulling the throttle back the whole time. Yeah. So the plane takes off, and he's trying to chase after it and get onto it. And 3 times they show the plane taxiing out to the runway all crooked, and then people come out to chase her, and he runs into and hides in the grass. And then they just cut back to this fucking same shot of him running, and then he hides in the grass again.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what the fuck? And they keep showing her in the cockpit, obviously the worst green screen ever going on behind her. And she's making these ridiculous faces. And I was just like, I hope that at Sharon Stone's memorial, they just play this scene of her making these faces and being like, oh, I don't know what's happening.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's, well, and I was thinking of that too, where, Richard Chamberlain's like, I'm the hero of a movie. This is awesome. I'll do this. And you do know that Brian Gunn might want to know that Richard Chamberlain is gay, so he could go on that list of,
is he now?
Action heroes. Yeah.
I wonder. I mean, I just thought that he just had zero chemistry with Sharon Stone, because at no time did he ever act like he wanted to fuck her, even when they were making out.
There was that one time. There was a one time. Yeah, that makeout was weird.
Super weird.
There was a one time when he like touches her head when she first fell asleep the first night.
Right.
He's touching her head, and then she wakes up and he pulls his hand back like, I wasn't being creepy.
Right.
But then when they're making out later, I'm just like, this is pretty hot and heavy, and they're in a fucking stew bowl. And then later you find, because like I said, I was getting drinks, I was doing whatever. When I come back, I'm like, they're not. I'm thinking they're in the pot, and that's what. The pot was open and empty and laying over to its side. And it's like, you guys could have left at any time. You decided to sit in there and make out.
Yeah, it was a good time to make out.
Of course.
There was a lion there, though. That's why they wouldn't leave the pot.
Oh,
but I thought that made it weirder that they were making out in a stew pot they were about to be cooked in by cannibals. Yeah. And now there's a lion standing there watching them. And they're just like, let us fuck.
Yeah. Let's do this. Yeah.
But yeah, he looked like it was super icky, and I thought maybe because I read that she was just a total bitch on this movie, and everybody fucking hated her, and so they all pissed in her bathtub, and she would go in and take milk baths, and she took her mouth back with a little piss in it.
Yeah, it's oh God, yeah, I don't know. It's one where at first, so I picked this movie because me and Jason were like, let's do Temple of Doom. And on my show, I have to put it with something. And I said, I don't want to put it with Romancing the Stone because that's a first in a series. And we can't do a second in a series. So let's just do something that's like this. And I chose this because I was just thinking that's like Indiana Jones. And then I'm watching it and I'm like, oh my God, this is almost as bad as Breakdown Lane. Like this is.
Yeah, it was. So fuck you, Phil.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah. Oh. That witch though was cool. It kind of reminded me in a way of the witch lady at the end.
Yeah. She was creepy.
The witch that you and I liked from Legend. That was really cool.
Yeah. She reminded me though of Grace Jones. The way she would like scream and
yeah.
And it was obviously like a young woman that was made to look old. So for a second, I was like, holy shit, I think that is Grace Jones.
Yeah.
But once we get into fucking King Solomon's mine, it's really underwhelming.
They walk at first. Here's what was funny about it. They walk in there after they're through the little tunnel, and then they're in this big open space with like silver things, or it looked like shiny. It might have been waterfalls. I don't know what it was supposed to be. And I'm like, oh, is this it? is that silver hanging up over there? Is there gold? Like, is this where they keep their money? And then they go a little further, and then they're in that little circle with the fire.
Right.
Then they go a little further, and all it is, it's not King Solomon's. You know, they go through that one tunnel that's shiny. That I'm like, honey, look, it's like diamonds, and she's already asleep.
Right.
It's like that, you know. But then they go all the way in there, and all it is a storage. You know, could be on Storage Wars. Like, hey, how much? It's got chest of things like booty and whatever it's from. But King Solomon's mine is like, isn't that supposed to be like the mine has like diamonds in it and gold, all this stuff? But it's somebody put their treasure there, and that's
well. And what's amazing is that they fucking wind up back in that lava room like 4 fucking times,
yeah,
somehow. And the lava is just like a hot tub with like the red light flipped on.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then what was the greatest of this whole movie? Well, 2 great moments. So there's these 3 areas to go in. First of all, before the German guy gets there, he steps in like quicksand.
Yeah.
And he's like, and Richard Chamberlain, Quartermain's just like, hang on, wait for it. And then they step in and then he's like, okay, now we can go. And then Sala kills everybody except for the German guy, mows everybody down with his machine gun, and then just walks over everybody, which was cool. Like, okay, that gets inside there. He goes, when they get inside there, that German guy goes, he shoots Sala already. Then he's in there and he tells the one guy, you go through that door, come back. If you see anything, come back here and we'll go through another one. The guy goes in and there's a big giant fucking spider, like prehistoric, like whatever, like a big hairy spider from Lord of the Rings. And you're like, but horrible looking and like square. It's not even like round.
Yeah.
It looks square. And it attacks the guy. And you're like, hold on, what the fuck? Like, it's supposed to be like, they're trying to just throw everything at it. And then the other part was, so then they get in that room where the jewels are, and I forget what activated it, but we talked about spike rooms.
Yeah, there's another spike room.
But they're not coming from the bottom and the top. They're just coming from the top. And I swear I saw her when she's going over to help him with the lid, that she hit one of them, and you could see the rubber move.
I'm sure that happened.
But so he's like, get up on that chest over there and help me. And they're both holding it up, like trying to hold it. And I'm like, that's not going to work. And then he goes, this ain't working. Hang on, let's get the thing to the chest. And they put that on there to the chest. And then they go, that'll work. And it works for 2 seconds. And then that thing busts. And then they're like, well, what do we do? And then they get lower and lower. And they go, maybe the chest will stop it.
Right.
And then the chest don't stop it. And then that's when they're there. And she's just like, all your jokes are stupid. Nobody gets your jokes. She's like, you're the only one. And then she's like in the middle of a speech of like, we're going to die. And then she's like, I just ate a bug. Like, what the fuck? Like you're dying and you're going to be like, oh, I ate a bug. It's like, oh. And then the German guy comes in. Oh, yeah, because he did the water, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the water starts coming in.
They're just sitting on the floor, and then all this water starts bursting in, and there was no shot of water before that. So you're just like, what the fuck? Did Sharon Stone's water just break?
Yeah. It's like, what the hell? Where'd this come from? And then that guy comes in and he's putting them in like his pockets and stuff. Like he has no plan. Like,
no.
Everybody's dead. Like, how are you going to get these big chests out?
And they've been searching for this fucking mine, and nobody brought a bag.
Yeah, exactly. And then Sala is actually alive, and Sala and the German guy. Then Sala's like, eat one, swallow it, and later on I'll cut your stomach and I'll, And it's like, I'm not gonna fucking go ahead and kill me then because I'm not gonna eat. But the guy's like, okay, and he eats one. You never see him grab one.
Right.
It just to him with his hand to his mouth.
Yeah.
And he eats like 3 of them. And you're like, what how many of these is he going to eat before they go on with the movie? Like, oh. And then there's the thing that they have to point out to everybody, which again, this shows you why Raiders is so cool. Raiders shows up. he finds the little stone that you step on, and a little dart will come out. So he's like, okay, we can't step on any of these. But on here, it's just like, don't step on that one stone right there.
With a big orange mark on it, yeah.
Yeah, and so everybody goes around it. When you do step on it, it drops down, but then there's a reset button to bring them all back up. That guy's like, hang on, let me reset it.
And then did you get what the fuck was in the water? It was some sort of giant dragon hippopotamus.
No, I did. It was Jar Jar Binks. So that was one where because I told Jason, I go, we'll record later. I said, I'm going to take a nap because I was up all day. I'm normally up all night, but today I was up during the day. My wife's like, take a nap. And I'm like, I got to watch these 2 movies. We got to record. So I'm watching, and all of a sudden, and I'm like, Jason said I really don't have to watch it. And all of a sudden, I'm almost dozing off, and I see this, like the guy, and there's, and I'm like, what the fuck? And it was Loch Ness, and so I had to rewind it, and I'm like, is that Jar Jar Binks? Like, he had the head of Jar Jar Binks. He's big and huge, like, you know, I don't know how big, like 6 feet wide and, you know, 8 feet long. That's just his head. And the guy falls in the water, and this thing just comes out of the water and eats him, puts him in his mouth, and he's like, help.
Right. And
then eats him, and then later, then wasn't there another one? Or I guess it was a spider, and then that thing. Yeah. So it was like, what is it? So there's supposed to be like spiders in these instead of like booby traps. These are just monsters that are waiting for you.
Right.
Like,
well, and apparently he lived in the littlest pond because it had those rocks that blocked his way from going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He had to swim on one side or the other because all those little things were there.
Oh man, it was so stupid.
Yeah, it was. Well, and then it was the thing where, again, Indy would never take shit from, you know, it's just like, you know, Indy was going to take the Holy Grail. His dad goes, leave it. He's like, okay. And he finally realizes, don't pursue this. Family's more important, whatever, all that bullshit. And then in this, though, they fucking steal the jewel. You know, he's like, leave that. That's for the mountain. Like, leave it in that. And he's like, okay. And then they come out of it, and they're having the celebration. Well, and the bullshit story that the guy tells him is, well, at least you have the story in your head, and you know that.
Yeah, I'd be like, fuck you, Chumbala, or whatever your name is.
Yeah, and your people took my wife's, or my girlfriend's.
Yeah, where's our fucking diamond tiara?
Yeah, that was worth a lot of money. And then they leave, and the gates close, and everybody can see them. Right. And all of a sudden, she's like, well, it sucks that we didn't get that. And he's like, well, don't tell anybody, but I got this. And
yeah, and I think he keistered it, dude.
And then, yeah, and then she's like, I got one too. And it's like, okay, so you guys just are thieves, you know? It's like what they said about India on Temple of Doom was like, so you were accused of, you know, robbing graves and all this. And that's exactly what Allan Quartermain is, robbing graves and not caring about the cultures.
Yep.
Yeah, it's. I'm sorry that I made you watch it.
I'm sorry that you made me watch it too.
Because now our show was this long, and our Temple of Doom might have been boring, but hopefully people like this.
I don't know. Do people listen to podcasts? I don't even know.
I think so. I mean, some people. I had Matt call me the other day, and he was like, or he texted me, and he's like, "Hey, I'm listening to your James Bond. I'm listening to From Russia with Love right now." I'm thinking, holy shit! Like you're way behind. Like. I'm gonna catch up, I swear. I'm like, okay, like goodness. But anyway, yeah. Okay, well, I guess thank you.
No, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Well, you know, it was good. It was good that you mentioned it, and I had no idea what I was gonna do coming up. So I was like, Temple of Doom. That makes sense. We'll do that. Even though this one wasn't as funny as the Raider, I thought our Raiders episode was really, really good.
Yeah, why weren't you as funny on this one, you son of a bitch?
I because we didn't have the pedophile Indy. We just had Indy with a little boy that was kind of weird, but
yeah, he's with a little Taiwanese kid the entire time, dude, and you couldn't come up with anything for that.
And what was funny with him was he came in with his brother. His brother was trying out for the part,
right?
And Short Round's like, and Key is like, no, they want this, and he's telling his brother how to do everything, and they're like, this guy's kind of cool. Let's talk to this kid. Let's have him. And he ends up getting Goonies and that. And it's like, oh.
I bet his brother wants to murder him.
Exactly. He's like, what the fuck, man?
This was for me. This is all I ever had.
Yeah.
You fucked up my life.
Right. But now they're like, but now that kid, Key was never in anything else except for these two.
No, and I always wonder like why he just dropped out of acting,
Well, and you had a good point on your last show where you were like, if Short Round came back for Indy 5, like,
yeah,
I'm all in. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's fucking great idea. I love it. Like,
that would be awesome. And I would like to bring Willie back too, now that he's married to
Spielberg. Now that she's married to Spielberg, yeah.
No. Now that he's married to what's the girl from the first one? I know it's Karen Allen, but what's her name? Marion. Yeah. So now that he's married to Marion, it would be amazing to have Willie come back into his life, and there'd be like this jealousy there.
Yeah,
that would be fucking cool. As long as she didn't scream as much as she did in Temple of Doom.
Yeah, it just wasn't all. Yeah, just annoying. But okay, I think that's all. Do you have you want to promote your show or anything or whatever?
I do have a show where we talk about movies.
Oh, cool, interesting. Who doesn't?
Just one of a billion. But it's called Popcorn Promises Podcast, and you can get that wherever fine podcasts are downloaded. It's me and my host, either Brian Gunn or Alicia the Trash Panda. She's been really busy lately, though, so it's been pretty much just me and Brian. But yeah, we're all big, happy podcast family. So
yeah, no, that's always good, and that's talking about that format. Should I do something else? And I'm like, no, because this makes me happy, and I'll do that. But that's what I do. So just know that certain movies stick with you and stay in your head and heart forever. So join me next time when I put two movies together with one topic or theme, and my cellular heart is big and gets fuller with every new movie I
That's
watch.
what she said.
See? With the new thing. It's full of blood. All right. Everybody's like, oh, I just vomited in my mouth. So
it's like custard.
Yeah. It's like, don't worry about it. It's made of plastic. And then there's raspberry custard in there. Oh, man. Well, anyway, thank you, everybody, and good night or good day or good evening, whatever.
Goodbye.